Hello, all you beautiful people, past, present, and yes, even those in the future. Welcome back to another video. A while ago, I made you guys a promise: 600 subscribers, and now I would do a long-form video on dot hack and D&D. This time, we are going to try to make the character Ovan from dot hack GU and put him through the Trials of Tav mod in Baldur's Gate 3. Before we get started, there are a few rules that I've set for this challenge to make things just a little bit more interesting. First and foremost, we have to play on honor mode. Basically, it is a harder version where enemies get boosted HP, damage, etc, and when our HP is dropped to 0, the run ends. It's game over. I can only use types of items that the character would use, so if it's aesthetically pleasing, that is what I would have to use for this challenge. No consumable items in battle, meaning potions, scrolls, are entirely forbidden here. We have to rely on just Ovan's abilities and Ovan's abilities alone. And I'm including a special rule of this that I've been wanting to try out for a while now because I thought it was fun. Since we have a character that is bonded with a artificial intelligence, I figured, why not use ChatGPT to decide on what Ovan would do in combat? Also, for this trial, we're only going to be doing 5 battles of this, because if we went through the entire Trials of Tav, this would be several hours long, as this is a near infinite gauntlet. If you enjoyed what you see here today, go ahead and hit that like, subscribe if you want to follow for more content like this, and let me know in the comments down below. Do you think Ovan is going to win this or not? I am making this video before I have done any of the trials itself, so I'm kind of interested to see how this will play out. Also, there's this new feature on YouTube called Hype. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but if you go and, hype up this video, that might help me out. But if you end up hyping up this video, I do appreciate it. It definitely helps out a lot. Alright guys, let's go ahead and see if Ovan has what it takes to go through the Trials of Tav. Oh, one more thing before I forget. There, this should be a better look for me, and it definitely fits the aesthetics that we're going for here today. So, a little background on Ovan. So, Ovan comes from .hack GU, and he is an enigmatic, morally gray character with a strong connection to Ida, which is an artificial intelligence that is bonded to him. In our adaptation, Ida is the AI fully controlling Ovan. It's cold, efficient, single-minded with a few purposes: preserve the host and eliminating threats. That personally is the backbone in every decision that we are making for this run. And like I said before, this is going to be run by ChatGPT, so it is going to be interesting to see the decisions that they make with this. Alright, now it's time for my favorite part: character creation. If you want to use this character for your games, feel free. Maybe you can make this build better. I would love to hear your suggestions. So, Ovan is going to be a level 4 Hexblade Warlock. The race that we choose is going to be human. He's going to have 8 strength, 12 dexterity, 14 constitution, 14 int, 10 wisdom, and 18 charisma. And since he is a charisma-based caster, charisma is what we're going to go for with this. As for other choices that we made, we chose the shadow-touched feet, not because it makes sense story-wise, as Ida is usually seen as this, well, I would say evil entity, like a shadow-based thing. But we also end up getting invisibility, as well as inflict wounds, which inflict wounds aesthetically, and it's a good spell, but it also is reminiscent of just breaking down code, with its corruptive nature of it. As for the spells, we chose Eldritch Blast, Booming Blade, and True Strike. As for the spells that we do know through leveling, we have Hex, Mirror Image, Hold Person, Hellish Rebuke, Armor of Agathis, and Bane. Okay, now that we got Ovan all figured out character-wise, let me tell you the items that I ended up getting for this run. So, the first one that we have is the Pointy Hat. It gives intelligence to persuasion checks. This is mostly for flavor wise, and not to mention, it kind of makes sense. Ovan is a very calculated character, so he's going to use his intelligence and his sway, his intimidation, his persuasion to essentially manipulate the people around him. Then we also have the Brain Drain Cape and Gloves. This is one of the mechanics that we're going to be trying to using today. So when enemies succeed saves, they gain a status called Mental Fatigue, which is a stackable penalty to Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saves. And if it has enough stacks, it will deal psychic damage. This will let Ovan win the mind game, as it were. Next, we got the Shadow Dragon Scale. Not only does it reduce the damage we take by 2, which is fantastic, it gives us 2 initiative, our weapons deal an additional 1d4 acid damage, and we become immune to acid. This is great armor piece for us, as Ida is usually seen just breaking down code or corrupting data, so acid, in my mind, is the closest thing we're going to get to that. Then we got the Worn Whisper Boots. It gives us a little bit of stealth. Again, this is mostly for flavor, as Ovan is usually seen in one place, and then he just disappears after, like, the conversation with no one being able to find him. So this is a nice little flavor thing. Then we got the Fey Semblance Amulet. It gives us advantage on Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saves. You might think this is counterproductive given the character itself, but considering Ida is controlling Ovan, it would make sense that it would have some kind of influence over him. Then we got the Corrupt Lord's Ring and the Ring of Free Action. So again, another set of rings for flavor. One creates a undead, while the other one gives us immunity to restraints in difficult terrain. Considering that Ovan is typically seen as a boss, being able to just not be able to be affected by things like hold person or just have the terrain be a factor is fantastic for this. And then there are the weapons, which luckily I got both of them at the same time. So we got the Caustic Scimitar and the Caustic Hand Sickle, which do 1d6 slashing and 1d4 slashing respectively, and do bonus acid damage, which I believe the effects of these were if they do connect, there's a chance that enemies will be afflicted with acid, meaning more reduction to AC, which means better hits for us. And again, it's the idea of just breaking down the opponent just so that way you can get a better hit in. And then we got the Ambuscade. These names. Ambuscade Hand Crossbow. It gives us 1d6 piercing damage, as well as an extra 1d6 versus enemies with full health. This can come in handy, I would say. It's not the best weapon. I couldn't find a better weapon to replace his guns, because he's normally a steam gunner in the games, but we probably won't have to worry about this too much. Alright, mechanically, this build is a glass but deadly single burst control, and has a weird psychological edge with the brain drain mechanics. So, let's see how Ovan's gonna do. I'm kinda curious as to how this is gonna play out. Battle 1 is simple. It is just a lone kobold. It only has 16 health. As Ida, its goal is efficiency. Keep a distance, use Eldritch Blast. We open up at a range, deal 9 damage, and then following it up for another 6 damage. It's simple, no resources were burned, and we win just pretty easy on that front. Nothing much to say about it. Much like the last battle, Ida is going to try to preserve its spell slots, and also play a little bit defensively while removing melee pressure, though for whatever reason the halfling in this battle decided to do absolutely nothing, hardly even tried to follow me. It just sort of stayed at a distance for most of this battle, which is kind of weird, but hey, it helps us out. The tactics used in this battle were using things like Mirror Image to prevent getting hits, Hex to add a little bit extra damage, and Booming Blade to punish movement. Yeah, there were times where we had a couple of good opportunity attacks against the Inventor as it tried to retreat. 2 mirror images were used to dodge attacks, and that kind of bought all the time that it needed. We ended up finishing off the Hyena with Booming Blade and an offhand acid attack, capitalized on more opportunity attacks, and pretty much claimed house. While the wave was cleared, we lost a little bit of health. We used 1 mirror image and we only had 1 spell slot left. So far, it's not doing too bad. However, things are going to be ramping up very quickly here. The human does land a hit before we're able to act. However, we do have Hellish Rebuke, and I did decide to use it immediately, doing a good chunk of damage right off the bat. For the goal of this fight, it was to try to kill the Vine fast to avoid crowd control, and then focus on the human while hitting the kobold. If the human looked like it would close the distance, we did have hold person to lock him down, though for whatever reason, I didn't use that at all. In fact, we just kind of dealt with the same tactics that we have been, slashing them up close, and potentially using Eldritch Blast when needed. Ida and Ovan did end up winning this fight, but it did use a bunch of resources. They took a little bit more health. They still had 19 HP, which is a little over half, but they have no spell slots and they have no mirror images left. So, when it comes to Warlocks, they don't get a whole lot of spell slots, and while they can recover them with a short rest, we only have 2 short rests before we need to take a long rest here. With 19 HP and no short rest left, Ida thought it would be best to take a long rest to get back those spell slots, the number of uses of the short rest, and everything that is involved with it. What was curious about this battle is that Ida only used a handful of things so far, and didn't use any of their Hexblade abilities, nor things like Armor of Agathis to give you extra defense while also dealing cold damage to melee attackers. I don't know, we'll see if they decide to use it later on. I just spent a full 2 minutes planning this one, and while the previous battles were more like instant, oh, they knew what they wanted to do, they actually had to plan out how they wanted to go about things with the number of enemies that are going to be showing up for this battle. Yeah, there were multiple small enemies, like the Closet and the Smoke Method, and then in the following round, there was a fallen skeleton wizard that could use Counterspell, and, well, it did just that, ended up using Counterspell or Mirror Image, and that is kind of when Ida had to really think about how to do things. So it had to decide whether or not to choose either the Wizard or the Mephit. The Wizard, you know, having Counterspell is no good, and while it might have a limited number of Counterspells, well, we don't want to end up risking that, so we decided to take that out first, followed by some of the other small enemies in the area. Ida's plan was to use Mirror Image and Hex on the Wizard, and the next turn it would inflict wounds. However, because of that counterspell, it really had to think about what it wanted to do in that moment. And while we did ended up going victorious in this battle, we left the fight with 9 HP and only 1 spell slot. And, oh god, that is... That's probably going to hinder us for this last battle coming up. Though, I could be wrong. I mean... who knows what's going to happen later on. Let's just hope that there's nothing else in the next round that is going to hinder us. Well, I stand corrected because the final battle had a brutal lingering effect, the Shadow Curse. Now, standing in dark areas in the Act 2 areas will immediately deal necrotic damage to a creature at the end of its turn, and then that damage doubles with each subsequent turn. The only safe place is in light sources, and in this area, there was just the fire pit, but a spider, the sword spider that you see here, blocked the way. Now, if we tried to move, then the sword spider would get an opportunity attack, and it probably would have hit, considering that I think it has a high chance to hit, like maybe a 6 or 7 to hit. This last part of the fight was pretty scary, because if we tried to move, the spider would get an opportunity attack against us, and chances are, it would have killed Ovan. But at the same time, we probably would have had a little bit more movement to get over there. It would have been a chance at the very least. However, after taking a few more minutes to plan things out, I had thought of a pretty good idea. It could cast invisibility to slip past the spider and be able to get near the light. But movement mattered in this case, as Ida miscalculated how much movement speed it had. Invisibility prevented the opportunity attack, but we didn't have enough movement to reach the fire pit before the shadow damage ticked and dealt so much damage to us. The necrosis ramped up and ended up defeating Ovan right then and there, just before he met. He was about 5 feet away from the light, and that is where the run ended. Honestly, I don't know if he would have been able to survive with what was going on there. Now, yes, if he would have had an extra couple of turns and he would have kept invisibility up, maybe the Shadow Curse would have ended up defeating all those enemies. However, there was also an additional effect that we didn't get to see here. So if certain enemies are defeated within this area, they end up coming back as shadow tainted versions of themselves. They lose most of their features, but they deal more necrotic damage, so we would have had to deal with that as well. So that was the Trials of Tav with Ovan. Now, it was very interesting to see ChatGPT try to maneuver all of these combat encounters. While they did have the basic idea of how to go about things, being able to use Eldritch Blast to the distance, being able to use their weapons to do massive damage up close, and they had decent AC. They had 17 AC, so they would have been able to block most low-level attacks coming out them, but they underestimated how much movement speed they had as a human, as well as they didn't really use their entire kit to their fullest. Despite having Armor of Agathis, they never ended up using that, and while Hex is a great spell to have, they kept losing concentration on the spell mid-battle, so they wouldn't have been able to take advantage of that all too much. So my recommendations that if you're going to play this type of character, if you want to play as Ovan in a sort of one-shot or whatever, keep at a distance, make sure that you have your defensive spells up prior to the battle if possible, and try to utilize your abilities all too often. Just read your abilities, because you never know when it might help you. And I think another thing that it, for whatever reason, did do, it never used Hexblade's Curse, which Hexblade's Curse gives you a better chance to crit, either in a 19 or 20. It gives you more damage, and if an enemy is felled while the Shadow Curse is then, you get temporary hit points. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button. It's absolutely free, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I really enjoy seeing what you have to say in the comment section down below. I hope all of you stay classy, stay beautiful, but most importantly, have yourselves a good night.